So in all honesty, I can't say that I hate the Book of Boba Fett. I thought it was an entertaining show. I had fun watching it. It had a lot of nice nostalgic moments that tickle me as an old school Star Wars fan. It was also playful, you know, a little bit controversial at times, and it was overall fun. So I have to say, I don't hate the Book of Boba Fett, but as I was watching it, something felt off. Okay, something didn't feel right. And at the beginning, I kind of couldn't put my finger on it, but I think I now have found out why that is. Okay, so as you're watching Boba Fett becoming this character, it just becomes more and more clear that the Mandalorian is actually the character that we expected Boba Fett to be. The Mandalorian, he's mysterious, he's merciless, he does bounty hunter work, you know, it's kind of a darker character. He never takes his helmet off. He doesn't talk much, you know. In fact, it's actually funny. Even the actor, Temuera Morrison, says Boba Fett talks too much in the Book of Boba Fett. So this is a quote from the actual actor. In the beginning, I was trying to pass my lines on to Ming-Na, the girl, the Fennec or whatever is her name. I want to stay mysterious. I want to stay quiet. Okay, so even he's like, dude, this guy talks too much. This doesn't feel like Boba Fett. Okay, whatever we're doing here does not feel like Boba Fett. Because a huge part of the appeal of Boba Fett was that you just didn't know much about him. Okay, he was kind of this character that's shrouded in mystery. But here, in this show, Boba Fett is portrayed as this crime kingpin with a heart of gold, a leader for the people. And it's like, no, hold on, stop. That's not the Boba Fett that I know and that I expect in this show. And I do see that they kind of try to justify, you know, why he suddenly wants to be this crime kingpin. But to be honest, like, to me, it just feels extremely forced, okay? No pun intended. He makes it out of the Sarlacc pit. You can literally see the writer's room. They're all sitting there like, okay, guys, you know, scenario building. So what else happened, right? He just made it out of the Sarlacc pit. It's like, I mean, Jabba just died. It's like, that's right, Steve. That's a good point. Jabba just died. You know, we gotta bring this together. This is the route forward. And it just feels like they tried so hard, you know, to then also bring the story into Jabba's palace, where they have all the nostalgic aesthetics, and they can bring back the throne room. And it just feels like, I don't know, man, that went a bit too far for me. It felt a bit forced. And the justification that they gave for why he now wants to be the crime kingpin, it just didn't really work for me. But the irony of Disney making a show that is actually kind of perfect if it would be called Boba Fett, right, which is the Mandalorian, only to then afterwards produce an actual Boba Fett show that is then not true to the character that people expect it to be, because you kind of already did that just before you produced this show. Do you know what I mean? It's like this meme, right, where Disney puts the stick in its own wheel only to then fall and hurt itself in confusion. I mean, what the fuck, Disney? This is just... It kind of, there's this strong disconnect between our expectation of the character, or I can just speak for myself, but my expectation of this character and how he's actually portrayed, right? There seems to be no real consistency. And even when he had this guest appearance in the Mandalorian show, even there he seemed to be a slightly different character again. And it just feels like they were even slightly insecure about the character of Boba Fett and how he should be and how he should behave and what he is. Also, not to fall into the trap to make him too much like the Mandalorian, right? Because he has to be significantly different. It is such a cluster mess of self-ownages, basically, by Disney, that it just made it quite hard. But nonetheless, in the bigger picture, like I said, I did enjoy the show. And there were loads of fun Star Wars moments. Like, for example, the whole Darksaber story, I did enjoy that very much. You know, that Mando can't wield it. It gets heavier because he's not in touch with the Force. And there were loads of cool little Star Wars canon moments. Cad Bane had an appearance. Loads of cool little nudges towards the Clone Wars. I personally really enjoyed the Rancor scene. I thought that was cool. And I was instantly like, it's King Kong. And I love that they put these little nudges in there. There were quite a few. Sometimes they went a bit too far, but overall, it felt to me like they had fun making it, you know, and they were trying their best not to be afraid, to have a little bit fun with some of the characters and the color palettes of the show and how each episode pans out. So I didn't hate that. I did appreciate that. And against all odds, right, a lot of people are now complaining that it's all just Tatooine. Everything about Star Wars is Tatooine. And it's actually true, okay? It gets a bit boring. But when it comes to the Book of Boba Fett, I have to admit, I did kind of enjoy this in-depth look at like the cultures and different parties that kind of work together and live together on Tatooine, like the Jabbas, the Tusken Raiders, their relationships. I enjoyed the stuff where they're hunting down the train. I enjoyed the whole scene where they go back to the Sarlacc pit and he takes down those guys on the motorcycles, hovering motorcycles, with the Slave One coming from behind. There were cool shots in there. And I even had this moment where I kind of enjoyed the explanation of him coming out of the Sarlacc pit, being kind of captured by the Tusken Raiders, and then he learns to live with them, and they nearly open up like a spiritual side in him, where he then becomes the Boba Fett that we now know from this show, who is like this good-hearted ruler for the people, and he became the character that he is now through his time with the Tusken Raiders. They nearly turned him into like a different person, and while I do kind of enjoy it, and I had this moment of me like, oh, okay, I see they're trying to, but I don't know, man. It's just not what people want to see. If it's like, here's Darth Vader, okay, and then in the beginning of the Darth Vader show, he has this horrible traumatic experience or whatever, and it changes the character of Darth Vader, and for the rest of the show, it's not actually Darth Vader. It is a slightly different type of character who's now really spirit. And it's like, no, dude, we are watching this show to see Boba Fett, okay? We want to see who Boba Fett is, and I just feel like these kind of explanations why he is the way he is fell a little bit short. Generally, I enjoyed the whole look of the show. The CGI was cool. I did enjoy that some of the pieces of Mos Espa actually seemed to be like real set pieces. It all looked a little bit cobbled together, but I did enjoy the look of it, and I thought it looked quite in keeping, with the Star Wars universe as a whole, for the most part, okay? If we're not talking about like poppy little colorful motorcycles that drive through the city, okay? I'm not going to go into those characters in this review, okay? But they weren't my favorite characters. Let's just put it this way. But I did enjoy the whole Luke Skywalker moment, right? And the Grogu moment. And at that point, you're like, hold on, am I watching The Mandalorian or am I watching Boba Fett? And it really merged. Even I caught myself even calling the show The Mandalorian. It's like, oh, it's Wednesday. There's a new episode of The Boba Fett, yes. So you're like, even saying it wrong, because it kind of merged into one thing, and then they're wearing the same, Mandalorian armor, and it's all a bit confusing, okay, for an old man like me. But I did enjoy it overall. But of course, you could also mention loads of downsides, okay? There were inconsistencies that gave me a little bit of a hiccup. None of these are like deal breakers. It's still a really fun show, and they didn't ruin it for me. But for example, that they get his ship, right, the new ship for the Mandalorian, from this like scrapyard, and then they tune it there in that small garage, and suddenly it kind of becomes the fastest ship in the galaxy, right? And he just races off from those two X-Wings, which are the police, and they're like, I've never seen anything like this. What kind of propulsion is this? And it's like, well, I would guess that if they can cobble that together in that garage, that someone else would have built that before, and it would probably be like a big standard all across the galaxy to have these kinds of forms of propulsion. So again, it's not a deal breaker, but it's just little details that pulled me out. Also that he has to ask Fennec about getting muscle, right? It's like, hey, we need to buy muscle. Where can we do this? And he's actually supposed to be like this veteran bounty hunter kind of guy. But he has to ask like his female assistant, don't want to make it about male or female, but he has to ask her how to get muscle, how to hire muscle, and she's like, yeah, I know someone. And he's like, I'm doing this for the first time. I'm sorry, bro, I've never hired muscle before for any operation. So it's just these kind of moments that break with the character expectation of Boba Fett. And also overall in the show, it felt like the last few episodes were just the best ones. Like suddenly people were really on board with it when it became The Mandalorian, and it's like, yeah, Boba Fett is great, but actually it's like they're hiding the Mandalorian like under a little blanket that just has a print of Boba Fett on it. And they're tricking all of us into believing that we're actually watching the Boba Fett show. And as I was watching it, I was kind of hoping that there would be a point where they reveal that who we have been watching as Boba Fett is not actually Boba Fett. Like it turns out that he's, for example, just a clone. Right, like he's just another clone from Jango, and that would then explain why he is not how we expect him to be, and why he thrives to be this kind of crime kingpin. He's just not Boba Fett, right? He's just another clone, and each clone is probably slightly different, so that would explain at least some of the stuff that we've seen. But overall, I have to say, I'm happy with the show, and I'm happy with the Star Wars content that we're getting at the moment, okay? It could be much worse. Let's just look at the sequels. I mean, if you like the sequel trilogy, good on you, but I just, for myself, I've just decided I never want to see them again. No, that probably is a bit harsh there. I would watch them again, but I just didn't enjoy them that much. And so a show like the Book of Boba Fett, and then also the upcoming Kenobi show, I'm sure that will tie in with all this as well. And in the bigger picture, it just really feels like Filoni and Favreau are currently trying to build this Star Wars cinematic universe. You know, Marvel has been like crossed out. It's like Marvel Star Wars written over Marvel with the marker, because it feels a little bit like they're trying to establish now these characters, right? We're getting Ben Kenobi, Ewan McGregor, we're getting Boba Fett, we're getting the Mandalorian, kind of like they introduced Iron Man in the beginning, and Captain America, and the Hulk, and slowly they assembled this aggregation of characters that then could potentially, in the case of Star Wars, build nearly a whole separate universe. Of course, there are these guest appearances of like characters we know, or there might be that scene with Luke. But overall, it's much more about these new characters that are just happening in the Star Wars universe, and they're establishing us. I mean, it has to be said that the advantage of Marvel is that these comic books already existed. People were already attached to these characters, while in this case, you have to make up a lot, right? And that's what they kind of did with Boba Fett, right? They're trying to establish these interesting characters, and in this particular case, I feel like it just fell a little bit flat of the expectation that we have. But then again, it's because they built themselves that stupid trap by bringing out the Mandalorian first, which is basically the Boba Fett show. So it's a bit stupid, but overall I'm happy with where Star Wars is. You know, all I'm saying is like the graph is maybe going slightly upwards now, while previously it was bottoming out pretty low. So it could be worse, and there's hope. But guys, what do you think about all this? Right? What are your thoughts on the Book of Boba Fett? Did you hate it? Did you love it? Is your family not speaking to you anymore because you like the Book of Boba Fett and they hate it? Leave any of your thoughts down in the comment section below. I would very much appreciate to read your thoughts. Thank you so much for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to smash the like button. You can also subscribe and hit the bell underneath so you're not missing future uploads, because I would hope to see you in another video on this channel. Until then, take care of yourself, and I'm out. Bye.